So for those of you who are listening to us on the app, there's going to be a pocket here of about 45 seconds or a minute where you may not hear what we're about to play to the YouTube audience, and we apologize for that. But since we're on location today in Mansfield and away from our studio, it kind of gets a little bit tricky with technology. This is, and I want to play it on YouTube because I want you to see, if you didn't yesterday, the emotions and the face of Oklahoma State men's basketball's coach Mike Boynton on the NCAA denying the repeal of a one-year postseason ban. Here it is.
So the message is clear because we had a $300 violation, no failure to monitor, no lack of institutional control, no recruiting violations, no head coach responsibility, no players playing ineligible. So if you got some of those things going on, don't do what we did. What we did was we asked them that we work with them through this process. On January 20th of 2020, I flew to Atlanta to do the first round of this process with the NCAA. The next day we played OU here. It was important that I be there. I went to Atlanta for no reason. To cooperate with them. To cooperate with John Duncan and Sharika Montgomery and Russell Register. And then this year, on February 7th, while in Lawrence, Kansas, for a game, the day we played, we had an appeal hearing. And we cooperated. And we showed up. And we'd answer their questions. And we provided all the information they asked. So if you're one of those other schools, be careful what they ask you for. Stan Wilcox should be ashamed.
So that's Mike Boynton, the head coach at Oklahoma State. I remember once after a game in Waco where his team came in and played Baylor about as hard as anybody. And, of course, Baylor and Scott Drew been on a nice run, including the national title. I like him. I like him a lot, even well before the video. But I saw that and his comments and the passion and emotion. And Jacob Unruh now joins us. He writes for the Oklahoman and covers Oklahoma State men's basketball. Jacob, what's been the reaction to not so much right now the NCAA denying the appeal? We'll get to that. To Mike Boynton, his emotions, his passion for his basketball program.
I think everyone is rallying around Mike. Yesterday was the very emotional, passionate version of Mike, and an angry version of Mike too. He was very controlled, but he's very angry and emotional about this, and very hurt by this. And he'd already had the full support of his team and coaches and administration and everyone around him. But I think he really rallied people around him, the players, the program, and I think he really brought a lot of attention to some of the issues of the NCAA right now, and just that they need to figure some things out because clearly this was not a good decision by the NCAA, and it's hurting players that shouldn't be hurt, and Mike went to bat for him yesterday.
You know, I think most people on the surface, Jacob, think, oh, this has to, if they didn't read about what it was, this has to do with the Adidas scandal and the FBI investigation, which Oklahoma State did get caught up in. But this is not about that. This is about $300 that a player got. And I don't think there's anybody in America who understands this, much less anybody in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, it has to do with the FBI scandal. I mean, the former associate coach Lamont Evans was involved in an FBI scandal and the Adidas scandal and took money, but he started taking money in South Carolina, came to OSU, continued it, and then he gave 3 separate $100 payments to Jeffrey Carroll, who, once they figured that out, They made him pay it back. He set out a few games on their own as they investigated. And Lamont Evans was fired and subsequently charged, and he served a 3-month prison sentence in federal prison. And OSU did everything they possibly could to fix the situation because they had no idea. But they're essentially getting punished for something they had no control over, and money that was paid to a player that was paid by Lamont Evans to the player, and then that was paid back.
So, in terms of on the court and the impact that has, I know, Cade Cunningham's gone to the NBA, but Boynton's got them going in a positive direction. Just how much of a blow, because of the expectations maybe that were out there this year, is this for Oklahoma State basketball and the fan base?
It's a pretty big blow as far as expectations. This was a team that I think was already pretty much expected to make the NCAA tournament and maybe make a deeper run. They lose Cade Cunningham, and that's the best player in the country last year, and he did a lot of tremendous things for him and carried them into the postseason and carried them to the Big 12 title game and carried them to the second round of the NCAA tournament. But I think they had a chance to be deeper and better this year, and they still do, but they don't get to show it in March now. But they have, their team has a deeper roster with transfers. I think that there's more experience with guys. Avery Anderson's coming into his own. He's got his third year of experience coming in now, and Isaac Likely's a great veteran. And then you add 5-star transfers like Moussa Cisse and Bryce Thompson, and add Tyreek Smith from Texas Tech and Woody Newton from Syracuse, and you've got big men now. You got guys that can shoot off the bench, and they really had this team moving in this direction. And you thought this team could be really dangerous once we get to March, and now it's going to kind of be a what if with this team.
Jacob, I don't know if this makes sense when I ask this question, but do you think if Cade Cunningham was still on the Oklahoma State roster, that the NCAA would have had the same decision? Because they're selfish as hell, and we know that, and they want all the money they can get, and Cade Cunningham being in the tournament makes money for them. Do you think if he was still on the roster and eligible at Oklahoma State, they would have done the same thing?
That's a good question, and it's I'd wondered this myself yesterday because Mike talked about the appeal hearing was February 7th, the day of the game at campus.
Yep.
And it took 9 months for a decision. So to me it looks like, hey, like they were like, let's how long does it take to make that decision? And 9 months seems like a really long time for a process that initially was supposed to take, I don't know, 100 days or something, I think is what they say in their rules. And they did it in 9 months. And so it makes you wonder if Cade had a factor. It's very easy to think that, but I mean, there's no proof obviously, but Cade had stayed another year, which was never going to happen. But if he'd have stayed another year, maybe they're still playing, maybe they go ahead and get it over with. I don't know, but it's very easy to kind of put your conspiracy antennas on and kind of wonder,
Yeah.
Was there any legal recourse they have outside the NCAA? Like, could they sue and maybe get in to the tournament based on any kind of like temporary injunction?
Well, that's the first question I asked yesterday. If there was what's the next step if they had any legal path, and they don't feel like they really do right now. Nothing's in the works that they would talk about at least, and because essentially the problem is not a lot of cases are won in the legal system against the NCAA. Generally, the rule kind of is, you're a voluntary member of this organization. So you've got to follow the rules and the punishments, and so the courts tend to kind of lean that direction. So OSU right now kind of feels like it's just throwing away money if they were to file a lawsuit. And so, I don't see anything right now, but if some donor wants to step in and pay for something like that, then maybe that happens. But also then OSU could also say, well, if you want to pay $1 million to do a lawsuit, why don't we just spend that on something else on campus?
Yeah.
So, it really felt yesterday like this was there was a finality to this. Like, this is it. And OSU, I think, is ready to move on in a way too. Though they're certainly not happy, but I think there's a finality in here.
All right. Now, I know you cover men's basketball, but Oklahoma State, and we've had other guys that do, Scott Wright among others, that have covered Oklahoma State. And just a quick note, obviously they bounced back from that tough loss to Iowa State and throttled Kansas, which they should do. But everything focused in on this team still is going to be right there in the end, going to probably play for a Big 12 title. Your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I kind of, OSU seems to be on that trajectory. I mean, I think Mike Gundy kind of alarmed us on Monday with his kind of somber mood about playing West Virginia. It seemed like he was a little more worried than I expected for a team that's physical and can really cause some problems for some teams. They're playing well right now. They did a lot of damage to a really good Iowa State defense, and I think that alarmed Mike more than anything. But I think OSU's defense is better. I think OSU's defense can carry them into Arlington at this point and really kind of see what happens from there with this defense.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Jacob. Good stuff. Good luck, Jacob.
Awesome.
Unruh. Thanks for jumping on. It's late notice, too, of the Oklahoman covers Oklahoma State basketball. Here are some of the text or chat room. We're going to, by the way, have another guest coming up in a minute. The NCAA has been and will continue to be full of you-know-what. I like the leadership. I would run through a brick wall for that man. Then there's more and more about his emotions and his passion. And there's one that's kind of questioning whether or not his emotions were real. I can't imagine.
I think they were.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you watch that and think that they weren't.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you got no feeling, man. I know that it's typical to question, kind of like when we see these big press conferences stuff. I've seen a lot of fake tears in press conferences, mostly from politicians or C-list celebrities, but I think that was absolutely genuine. I think Mike Boynton was pissed off, and rightfully so.
From Chris, you know what Oklahoma State's crime is? They're not North Carolina or Kentucky, and more and more and more and more.
Their problem is they did the right thing and admitted it.
No, so did Stephen F. Austin. So did Stephen F. Austin.
So because they admitted it, they got. I mean, it's upside down.
Cooperate with the law, right? And you might get a year, take it off your whatever. I mean, they did it, and they still for $300. Now they did. It was wrong what they did. What the Lamont Evans did. But I wonder what's going on with Brad Underwood because he was there during that time. When we come back, we continue. We're not done. We're going to take you all the way up until 6 o'clock today.